Hello, and welcome to the Game Dev London podcast. I'm your host, Marek, and you can refer to me as he, him. And today I'm going to be talking with Simran, who you can also refer to as he, him. Simran is the founder of Format, a nightclub inspired gaming event held in Manchester. Today we'll talk a bit more about the unique approach Format brings to the gaming community, as well as taking a wider look at games events in the UK and about increasing representation of the North in the UK game space. So to start with, Simran, hello. Uh,
Um,
would would you like to introduce yourself?
yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Simran. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm the founder and CEO of the UK's biggest games industry nightlife event, Format GG.
Great, nice, quick introduction. I like it. So yeah, just a couple of questions about Format itself. Then, for listeners who may not have heard of it before, I think it's an awesome kind of perspective that you've kind of taken the games industry into, and I think it really celebrates the kind of the fun element of gaming, which I think can
Oh,
get a
thank
bit,
you.
yeah, I think it can get a bit missed sometimes at sort of a more kind of corporate sort of event. So yeah, I think it's really cool what you're doing. So when did it start? When did you start Format? Because I don't think it was Format at first to begin with, was it?
No, so the origin story of Format is quite an interesting one. So I like to open with this. I basically started it because I got bored and frustrated at the lack of events in Manchester. So when I was at my first year at university, I started the events in 2016 throughout the summer because I'd just finished my first year in game design at FutureWorks School of Media, which are part of UCLan. And I just thought at the time there was no meetups or anything outside of this one pub meetup for game devs in Manchester, and it just really bothered me that there wasn't really anything to connect like gamers and game devs. So I just got really bored with a friend at the time, and we decided just to throw 50 quid on Facebook ads, and we just decided to name this thing Manchester Gamers Unite. Just we clicked the most like obvious title that you could think of that really just kind of sold what we were trying to do. And then basically at that point, 50 quid out went out into the ether on Facebook ads, and we just basically went to this bar. We didn't even hire the space. We just turned up and said, "Can we just like put like two consoles?" I think it was a PlayStation 3 at the time, and I think it was like a Nintendo Wii or something like that that we put on showcase. It was literally just two little consoles in a bar, and then 150 people came through the doors. So for us, we were like,
Wow.
"What? This is insanity! Like this is actually insanity!" Just 150 people just turned up off the back of 50 quid and word of mouth. So it was absolutely heaving all night. And for me, there was a real buzz about, all these people being in the same room. And it was just so nice to see these community events like that I felt like Manchester really, really lacked at the time because there was virtually nothing before we came along. And then once that happened at the end of the night, the bar manager at Dive Northern Quarter, which is very special to my heart because it's the origin story. It's always the origins venue. It's a really cool bar as well. I recommend people check it out if you're ever in Manchester. Came to us and was like, you can do more events, right? You can do more events. The guy was like, yeah, this guy's just brought 150 punters in on a Thursday night. Like, please get this guy back in. So we just said, we looked at each other, myself and the friend at the time, and we just went, should we try and do another event? Like, should we just do another one next month, see how it performs? So we did it again, 50 quids on Facebook ads, turned up, 200 people turned up. So we started to realize that there was a real appetite for these type of events in Manchester. So again, we decided to give it a formal name, Manchester Gamers Unite, or MGU as it was most commonly famous for. So then from that point on, we did another event, the third one. But this is where the event starts to really take its identity and become the stepping stone origin story of what it is today. Again, 250 people turn up to town. So we were seeing small increments of people turning up to this thing, which showed me that we were on the right track to building the event that I desperately wanted. This was still throughout the summer of my first year at university. So I'd not even gone back to uni at this point. So I was really, really happy with how this was performing. And basically at this event, I kind of saw like the trigger moment that kind of like led to like me dedicating building this business was for me, I've always felt like there's a communication issue in the games industry between creative and consumer. I don't feel like the two communicate as much as they should, even though they two feed into each other. Coming from game development background myself and working on titles across all major platforms, game developers have this real bad habit of sitting in an echo chamber where they just don't communicate with their audiences. And then on the flip side of that, because of the bad communication, the audiences get frustrated. They start to make assumptions about game development processes. I don't think I need to speak to anyone listening to this podcast when I say game development is the hardest thing on the planet that you can undertake. I think rocket science is probably easier than it at sometimes, because it is genuinely just such a hard graph what we've signed up for. And gamers, as a result of that, just don't understand that. But at the event, that we had a bunch of employees from Cloud Imperium turn up to the event in Manchester working on Star Citizen, and then a bunch of the gamers realized that they had Star Citizen hoodies on, so they went up to them, and I believe it was a 3D artist at the time who was at the event, and a bunch of the punters came up to him and basically was like, "Why is your game not out yet? Why is your game not done yet? Like, I backed your game a long time ago. Like, where's my money?" Basically, I thought the whole situation was about to turn into the Stewie Griffin Brian meme of "Where's my money? Where's my money?" And basically, this 3D artist basically just sat down with him, had a drink with him, and was like, "This is how it works. Like, this is." And he explained 3D art to him, and he explained why these things take so long. And the gamer apologized to him and said, "I'm really sorry. Like, I didn't understand that." And in that moment, it just went, that that is the issue, that all these big corporate trade shows, all these private industry parties are missing, that bridge, that gap. So I started to coin a phrase called community driven development from that point on, which was bringing together the creative and the consumer to basically feed into each other and have the community have an active part in the products that creatives were working on. From there, I really dedicated itself to really exhibiting local talent in Manchester. So our first ever two exhibitors were Ginger Biscuit Games, Tim Keenan, the original OG, as I like to call him. And then we had Prospect Games with Robot Champions, I believe it was, or Unboxed. No, it was Unboxed. Unboxed, they were working on at the time to come and exhibit. And they were the first two original developers to showcase. And from that point on, I realized that we can build this bigger. Like, we can get game studios to come in and exhibit to this growing community, which was just continuing to grow. Like I say, it was going up in small increments and every time. We never saw a decrease. It was just small increments, which to me showed there was a real appetite for this. And then we just basically did that for over a year, just these monthly continuous events. And these things were getting bigger and bigger every time. And it was becoming a lot hard work to host one of these every single month just because
Yeah.
of the sheer size, sourcing the developers. But I'm an extrovert by nature. I love talking to people and I love networking. So I was just getting all the talent. And the game studios were, because they thought we finally have an event in Manchester that we can exhibit at. So we started attracting bigger studios, double A's, to the point where we were having Sony and Ubisoft under the same roof in this tiny bar, which for me, getting as a student still at the time, I'd just gone into my second year at this point, getting these two colossal giants under the same roof to exhibit side by side in a little bar in Manchester, to me was showing that we are obviously onto something that these trade shows just are not capitalizing on. So for me, that's kind of like how it started to form into the event. It started off as like an underground, grimy nightclub, and I really leaned into that because I'm a huge fan of video game culture. Like I wanted to work in video games since the age of 5, and my mum supported that journey all the way through. And I'm very fortunate I've got to work on so many titles across everything. But video game culture is incredible. It is the most adaptable medium on the planet. It's better than music, it's better than film in terms of how it can be very modular and how it can be applied. So many products and brands throughout the whole world. And for me, obviously being a student at the time, I think like most students, night clubbing is like a big thing for us. So I remember going to the warehouse project in Manchester and thinking, why does this not exist for video games? Like, why has no one took the most adaptable medium on the planet and just thrown it into nightlife culture? The two complement each other, which a lot of people said I was insane for. I remember like when I pitched this to a lot of my peers in the Manchester games industry, they said you should just give this up and go work in Tesco because like this is not going to work. I took the most introverted industry alive and mixed it with the most extroverted. But there are ways that you can do it so that each culture feels like that they really are a part of it. And to me, that's how I refined this process over monthly events, just really incorporate, okay, so everyone likes music, DJs, everyone likes video games. Okay, let's get the game developers in. Everyone likes like, have the social aspects of it. So let's just invite the core demographics in. Obviously, the bar's there if people want to have a drink and chill, but then there's the networking side of it as well. The game devs can speak to other game devs that are there exhibiting, but then the gamers get the communication with the game developers that I'd always wanted, and they get to hang out with other gamers and content creators. can come and find games to play and network with content creators. So it started to naturally, fluidly build itself into the event over time to the point where we were just packing out bars in Manchester, and we basically just could not we couldn't find big enough venues to fill it out. And then yeah, that kind of ties into like the big event which transformed us into the UK's biggest games in like September 2018, where we hosted a massive event in the Printworks to the point where we had like over 1,000 attendees, to the point where there was a huge queue just going around the Printworks of people just dying to get in. And yeah, the event has just continued to grow and grow and grow ever since that day. It's a fantastic business that I'm super proud of its journey, very grassroots origin, started from nothing. And very, very proud to say that we've not only united the Manchester game dev community, we've created an event unlike anything else in the world that has attracted investment into Manchester. It's provided countless jobs for people in the industry, but it's really highlighted the UK to abroad, that we are a hotspot in Manchester for video game development and events, to the point where we attract people from all over the world for our events just to come and exhibit and take part in our industry night the night before.
Amazing. What a great story. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome origin story. And yeah, I think you touched on how there's this real want, I think, from the gaming community for kind of new and exciting ways to kind of celebrate their passion, right?
Mm.
And and yeah, like you say, you've taken these. It's like a melting pot, really, isn't it? Of content creators and a nightclub and gamers and game devs, and you just kind of thrown them all together, and it's created something awesome. And like it really, yeah, really highlights, as you say, the attraction that people have to these sort of things to bring people together and to celebrate games. Yeah, awesome. So I'll
Oh,
just on format a little bit more then. Um, so it's a 2 evening event, right?
mhm.
So do you think you could go into a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, of course. So, thanks to our partners at Escape Technology who enabled us to make this transition. We used to be an entirely one evening event, which was kind of the main marquee consumer networking hybrid event that we had. But a while ago, our friends at Escape Technology really enabled us to make a huge leap that I wanted for the business, which was to have an entirely industry focused night as a way of saying thank you to our exhibitors, sponsors, event partners, everyone who's participating in the event, effectively to come together in a place where they can make deals with each other, network with other exhibitors, showcase their games off to publisher meetings. I've been to a lot of events around the world, and I think Develop Brighton is a really good event for the UK games industry scene, where you've got so many people across the industry so accessible to each other, where you can literally just walk into a bar and there is someone who is the head of publishing at Team 17 that you can just go have a conversation with. And for me, our event is absolutely fantastic, our main marquee event. Like everyone from the industry is just walking around. But I always wanted to have a 2 evening event where the exhibitors can just have that bit of decompression from the main event, because we are a rave for the games industry and a party, and it can be quite hectic at times. Our events take place over 3 whole floors at our Manchester venue. So there's a
Wow.
lot of ground to cover. There's 3 whole floors of exhibitors. And if you're a publisher or a games journalist trying to get through all these 3 floors, moving throughout a rave, it's a lot. There's like 25 game exhibitors at this thing. So you've got to play all those games, provide feedback, try and enjoy the event network. And there's a lot. Like you could say that I've kind of overthrown just so much content at some, which is never a bad thing at industry events. Having too much to participate in that you almost run out of time. So I wanted to have a night dedicated to where people can really get together and network on a more intimate level before just the chaos of the main event part takes over their lives. So we transitioned into a 2 evening event. So we have our VIP industry night, which is called RE format. It was quite on the nose with the name because you have to be invited to it over
Yeah.
email. Yeah. And then we have the main side of it format, the ultimate gaming social. So that is like the main trade, like the sort of trade show, networking event, nightclub event, hybrid, all thrown into one. So our attendees get, and well, our exhibitors and attendees get 2 nights effectively out of this event, which I feel like is lacking in a lot of industry events, because I don't, well, outside of Develop Brighton, I don't feel like an EGX, I don't really feel like there's a lot of events off that. And even then, our approach to our VIP night is very different. Like ours is exclusively, making people feel like, they can really network, make those refined conversations, have those key discussion points they want to, and we deliver keynote presentations at it to thank all of our partners, sponsors, give them the chance to really exert their brand out to the wider game dev community, and get the chance to really forge those meaningful connections. When then also they get the exhibition side of it, where they can come and exhibit, getting that interaction with the community, really develop those real community connections through that community driven development ethos that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, and just effectively have an amazing night. If I had to break down the event, it is just an amazing night.
Oh yeah, it does sound really really cool, really cool. And yeah, and I think that's like you said, it's a good problem to have, the fact that you've had to spread it out across 2 nights now, and it just shows the growth of format, and the fact that you're able to adapt it as well, and you're kind of to allow you to kind of take it in your stride. I'm sorry if you can hear whining in the background, by the way. I think it's my dog's waking up from his nap.
No, that's fine. I thought it was my dog, to be honest
No.
with you. At the back of the door. No, dogs are always welcome on the podcast. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
dogs are welcome. Yeah, we will allow podcast interruptions for dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that should be an unwritten rule of
Yeah,
podcasts.
absolutely. Yeah, but it does mean that when you're talking, I might start muting myself just in case he gets a bit angsty. Anyways, so great. So yeah, that's format in a nutshell, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, origin, what it is, and what it can bring to the kind of the community in Manchester, which is awesome. So I kind of wanted to move the conversation a little bit to the kind of the wider UK game scene,
Mhm.
and you've already touched on Develop and EGX, and I was at I can never know how to say it, WASD, WASD. People have different names for it. I was there last weekend, and to be honest, because I haven't been to Develop myself yet. I'll be going this summer. But in terms of an event as like a kind of your more standard exhibiting event, I thought WASD, which is what I decided I'm going to call it, WASD, was probably my favorite one I think I've ever been to. It was a little bit smaller than EGX, and there he goes again. A little bit smaller than EGX in kind of scope, but and pretty much every game there was indie,
Mhm.
and there's just a really nice kind of sense of the sort of more celebratory side of games development and games over kind of a more sort of corporate approach.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, yeah, have you got any kind of experiences that you've really enjoyed that have maybe you've taken into format,
Mhm.
or things that you thought maybe were missing from other events? I know obviously format ticks a lot of those boxes in terms of things that you can't get at other events. But yeah, I was just wondering kind of your thoughts on those.
Yeah, so format's unorthodox approach is very unique. So, as I said earlier in the podcast, a lot of my peers in the industry, when I first started this business, originally thought I was an absolute madman, and they just did not think it would work. And for me to really grow a unique event outside of the box of traditional events, I had to explore other alternative events. So I go to a lot of nightclub events, I go to fashion shows, I go to pop-up shops, see how I can take inspiration from lifestyle culture and implement that into the event. So in terms of other events early on and the initial concept of format, there weren't many industry events that inspired me because I didn't want to be like a lot of other events. My favorite event, which has actually I've taken some inspiration from as of late, and it's more just the concept, and it's not actually the main event itself, it's the after parties that kind of take place afterwards, is Develop Brighton. I'd say Develop Brighton is my favorite industry event outside of my own, of course, because I do think the team at Develop Brighton do a wonderful job in the sense that they bring the whole game dev community together. Even though it is very industry focused, they do it in a very lackadaisical way. Like, it's very easy to go in. And when I say lackadaisical, I don't mean like the event itself. I mean, I love the easy approach to it. Like, everyone is just so accessible. I love it. Like, I love going to Develop Brighton. Like, I think it's fantastic. And for me, one thing I've found while I'm there is some of my best networking has been done, not necessarily on the trade show floor, but all the meetups that take place around Develop Brighton. And for me, you've got like the special effect party, which is hosted by Simon Barrett of Co-op Innovations. I think that's a fantastic one that he does, which feels like this really game developer focused party. So when I was at Develop Brighton, I always thought I kind of want like a dev focused evening. like where we can capture this sense of community the night before our main event. So you could say that the parties at Develop Brighton have really played a part in influencing RE format, the VIP industry night. But in terms of our main marquee event format, the Ultimate Gaming Social, not much has influenced that from modern industry events because I say I wanted it to be very unorthodox. I wanted it to bring together all demographics within the industry, not just certain key demographics. It was for everyone: content creators, gamers, and game developers, publishers, and investors, all to come together for a night of nightlife culture effectively. And I felt like no one in the whole world has been able to capitalize on implementing nightlife culture into video game culture like Format has done.
Yeah, I think I agree. I do definitely agree. I know what you mean about the kind of the relaxed style of networking. I think when I was younger, I used to think of networking as like a transaction that you just kind of you turn up with 10 to 50 business cards, and if you get rid of 30, then you're definitely going to get hired at some point. Just wait for it to come in. And it's just there's it's just that's just not how it works. And I think the more that um game dev networking events and exhibiting events, the more they lean into that relaxed and kind of encouraging style where you're just positive, everyone's in the same space, everyone's kind of brought to the same level. I think that's really important. There's not this
Mm,
feeling of, oh, I can't speak to this person or something. It's like you're all in the same place and you're there for the same
yeah.
reasons, effectively. And I think because I run my own Liverpool networking event, which I only started last summer, and our growth hasn't been quite as dramatically impressive as Format, but we really sort of pride ourselves on that same relaxed style. And we work a lot with universities and with game studios to try and encourage more, kind of cross that gap a little bit, the bridge that I certainly felt when I moved up to Liverpool 8 years ago now. I certainly felt that it was like a really just sort of intangible, like just out of reach kind of industry, at least
Mhm.
in the local area. So yeah, that's kind of what compelled me to start something like Liverpool Game Dev Network. Very original name there.
I
And
mean,
yeah,
I mean, for what it's worth, my original event was on the nose as well, mate. So don't ever take the mick out of like on the point names. Like
yeah,
we all start off somewhere, my guy. Don't worry about it.
yeah. Thanks. um, and so yeah, then sort of another kind of question then going on from the general UK game scene. I mean, I was born in London and I was raised in London, but I feel like I've lived in Liverpool now. I feel like an honorary Scouser, maybe, but it depends who you ask, I guess. But just in kind of the representation of the games industry up north and in the Midlands as well. The first EGX I went to was in Birmingham. It was great. It was at the NEC in Birmingham.
Mhm.
But ever since then, and I think that's probably been like 5 years now. It's always been in London since. Obviously, pandemic. We don't include that year. Um, and yeah, I think one of the most impressive things about Format, beyond all these kind of the unique approach to the games industry, is as you say, you've kind of been able to unite the Manchester games scene. And I think there needs to be more of that sort of discussion happening in the
Mhm.
north and just out of London, essentially, and out, or at least out of the south. I'm not saying that not to go to these events in the south, because they are brilliant and
Okay.
they do serve like a fantastic purpose. But I think, yeah, there's room for so much more.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering if you've got any kind of thoughts on that yourself.
Yeah, so the passionate northerner in me is going to break composure for a minute and just say the games industry is not the south. Like the north has got some amazing, fantastic studios, and I think it's an incredibly bad disservice to the UK games industry that we focus so much on the industry being down south. I actually feel like the northern games industry has been completely dealt a bad hand, which is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about Format being the biggest event in the north, and I'm very proud of that. Obviously, we've got your more commercial events such as NEC Insomnia in Birmingham, and Manchester and Liverpool Comic Con that take place, and they're very more consumer trade shows, if I was to categorize them, rather than industry events where you attract the wider games development network and gaming community. And for me, I love the events. Like I say, Develop Brighton is my favorite industry event outside of my own. I think it's absolutely a phenomenal event, which I love. You've got WASD because that's what I'm choosing to pronounce it, because that way no one can say I'm pronouncing it wrong. Uh, so you've got EGX again, which is fantastic. These events are amazing to go to. But for me, there are so many events that people just don't know exist here in the North. And that's because we've got the likes of a lot of establishments in the game industry that are choosing not to highlight them. We've got amazing events. So Format prides itself on being what I would class as like the biggest games industry event in the North that unites, we bring everyone together on a larger scale. And then obviously you've got your more games industry specific meetups, such as the likes of Gamio based in Leeds, who, they've done amazing work in Yorkshire, which is focused entirely on the Game Dev Network. You've got Scottish Games Dev Week, which happens in Edinburgh, which I still class as the North because it is part of the North of England, which, I've started to see get a little bit more publicity lately in the likes of MCV, which is really good to see. And then obviously you've got yourself, Liverpool Game Dev Network, and there's so many other meetups that take place. There's Game Bridge in Middlesbrough, which is run by the guys at Radical Forge, which is a fantastic meetup for games industry veterans and then aspiring game development students that all come together in a really, really cool way. There's all these fantastic events, and some of the greatest studios in the games industry are based in the north of England. We've got Rockstar in Leeds and Scotland. We've got Team 17, we've got Sumo Digital, we've got Cloud Imperium. There are so many game studios up here in the north that just don't get the representation. And Manchester and Liverpool, in fact, I'll tie Liverpool into this specifically. Liverpool's got some amazing game studios. They've got Tencent, they've got Firesprite, they've got Sony, all these amazing studios in the north that just don't get publicity, because it just seems that the industry seems to be so centric down south, which to me is a huge disservice, not just to the event scene, but to the entire wider game dev community. And it's why events like Format have grown in prominence, because we've been able to unite. I wouldn't say we've gone beyond the borders of Manchester, and we are going to anyway. Sneaky hint there for you, but we have gone way beyond the borders of Manchester in terms of the event that we've built. For our next event on May 25th alone, we're attracting exhibitors and sponsors all the way from Barcelona, Germany, Portugal, Belgium, Finland. We've got one guy coming all the way from Boston, from our partners at Escape Technology, just to come participate in the event. And we attract some of the leading games industry brands and studios such as Sony, Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Merge Games, Lad Bible, Sneak Energy, Wraith Energy, Alienware, Sold Out, Team 17, who are exhibiting our next event. We've attracted investment and attention to the Manchester game dev scene, and I would say the wider northern game dev scene, to really highlight the talent and amazing events that take place up here. But we've also really built a central hub across the whole north of England where game studios can travel to. Even people down south travel all the way up to Manchester just for events. We've got one exhibitor coming all the way from the Isle of Wight. I don't know why. I found the fact that someone's coming from the Isle of Wight more impressive than someone's flying over from Portugal there. I don't know why. I just found that really
Is
cute.
that
Someone's
Spencer?
in a loop.
In a loop,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Is he the only game dev on the whole of Isle of Wight
I
from the
think
sounds of it?
maybe, yeah, quite
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah, they're coming all the way from there, and that just shows the reach that this event has. That it's
Yeah.
reaching people all the way in the Isle of Wight, people all the way in Barcelona and Germany, are seeing this and going, "We need to fly over just for this event." And you only typically see that with larger events such as EGX or Insomnia. So for myself to see people wanting to fly away from foreign countries just to come participate in what we've built is absolutely phenomenal. We've had amazing conversations with some of the what I would class some of the large. I've been told that we're quite a large, medium-sized event, which for a team of 4 people, behind it is quite a high pedestal to be put on, which really humbles us. So we're really happy to hear that, and the fact people travel for it humbles us. But to bring it back to the original point of what you were saying of how I feel about the Northwest, the South has some amazing events, but I feel like format is leading the charge in putting the Northern Games industry event scene on the map, and we're going to continue to do that. We are expanding out of Manchester soon, and I'm going to offer what we have to as many cities of the North as humanly possible, because we have done the impossible. We have mixed nightlife culture and game culture seamlessly together in a fluid way that works absolutely fantastic, that unites all core demographics of the games industry together. We're exceptionally proud of that, and we're going to continue to do that outside of Manchester, because we really are wanting to highlight the amazing talent here in the North, and I can't wait to show what we've got on the horizon.
Yeah, very exciting indeed. So my final question, I guess, is we're talking about how the North can, what more could be done essentially to help with representation of the games industry in the North. And I was wondering if you've had any kind of interaction with local councils or kind of local funds. And I'm just wondering if there's what the general kind of attitude seems to be towards gaming. And I'm not sure if do you feel like you have to work kind of extra hard to convince people if you're from, like, if it's a northern event maybe potentially compared to a southern event. I'm not too sure if you've had any experiences yourself about that.
I have had experiences, and this is a very individual by case question to answer. So I've spoken to a lot of different councils across various areas of the Northwest, and I've also spoken to some of the government down south as well about this. And I would say it goes on an individual basis. So I've found, for example, in certain cities, the council just don't either have the funds or interest to build a games industry event in their own region, which again I think does the North a huge disservice, because they don't realise what they're doing on the large scale thing, which is why it's allowing the South to be more prominent in the games industry scene. And yet I've gone to other areas of the Northwest and other areas of the North where they're like, yes, please bring this here. Like, we'll give you all the forms to fill out, like, and if you can qualify for this grant, they'll do that. But I have found that from especially abroad and down south, that because obviously London is the money capital of the UK, that a lot of investment takes place there. So obviously there's a huge emphasis to grow things there, because that's where the hotspot for investment is. But we have seen a huge rise in investment into Manchester specifically over the last few years, and other areas of the Northwest. Liverpool has had amazing investment put into it, especially in the Baltic Triangle, with the likes of Tencent, Sony, and lots of other amazing game studios. Milky Tea, for example, have just announced their acquisition as well, which is another example of Northern investment. Again, really exciting to see. We've got the likes of Manchester becoming a tech hub, not just for video games, but for wider tech as a whole area. So I think the North is slowly starting to be recognised for its potential that we have. But I think it's up to if we wanted to really grow out the Northern games scene, I think that a lot of the higher establishments need to start proactively promoting it as a hotspot. We need to see the people who represent video games in government. We need to see the people who have these large followings on social media really highlighting the talent in the North and the need to build it out. Escape Technology, who we work with, are absolutely phenomenal. They sponsor events all throughout the northwest of England, because one of their prime missions is that they recognise the talent from the studios that they work with to do that. And I think that, if I had to highlight someone who I think is really investing in the North, it is Escape Technology, because they just really, really are proud of what the Northern games industry is achieving. And I think if more companies adopted that mentality, we would see this huge growth in the North of events. And I just think that whilst it's changing, and I think it's northern businesses who are making that change, and a few like say like Escape Technology and a bunch of other investors down south are helping make that change. I think that there needs to be more recognition from the larger games industry establishments to really push the talent, because it benefits everyone. If the northern games industry scene grows, the UK games industry scene grows. Like, the games industry, I said it earlier in the podcast, isn't down south. It's everywhere across the UK. It's in Edinburgh, it's in Manchester, it's in Liverpool, it's in Leeds, it's in Bristol, it's in Birmingham. Like, it is everywhere. Like, the games industry doesn't just stop as soon as you hit the borders of London and above. Like, it's not like Game of Thrones where it's just the frozen north beyond the wall. Like, we exist, and we bring lots of money into this industry. So I think that we need to have this huge recognized appreciation of the North, whether that's like things like the BAFTAs being hosted in the North one time, or EGX being hosted at somewhere like Birmingham. Just like seeing this more recognition of events, because it benefits everyone in the end. And yeah, like I say, this is not me like having a go at the South. Like the South has some amazing events. I understand how the game is played, why a lot of companies choose to operate there. But I think, we're missing a trick with the North of England. There's so much money here. There is so much amazing talent here, and it benefits everyone if more events open up here.
Amazing. Yeah. What a great final rallying cry to end. So, yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up for today.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that concludes another episode of the Game Dev London podcast. I've been your host, Marek, and you can find me online on Twitter at MJ Smagala. And a huge thank you once again to Simran for being my guest today. And I was just wondering, Simran, where people can go to find out more about you.
Yeah, of course. So to follow Format, please go to format.gg for our website, and our Twitter is format@gg. Our Instagram is format.gg, and our Facebook is format.gg. Nice and simple, that one for you all. And then for myself personally, it is my name. I'm very easy to find on Twitter, Simran Witham. I made it as easy as possible for people to find me. And then we have our next event on May 25th, our 2023 launch party, which is going to be a phenomenal event. It is going to be massively busy, and there are a huge amount of game studios and brands coming to this. So if anyone wants to connect with me in person, I'll be there on the night. So please do reach out and attend the event.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome, Merrick.
All
It's
right.
been a pleasure.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.